The cake sat untouched in the center of the table, 40 candles flickering like accusing eyes. Around me, the guests shifted uncomfortably, their fake smiles slipping as they witnessed what was unfolding. My husband of 15 years stood before me, his arm wrapped around a woman I'd never seen before. 2 children clung to her legs, staring up at me with curious expressions. "Everyone," David announced, his voice steady as if he wasn't dismantling my entire world at my own birthday party, "I'd like you to meet Vanessa. My wife of 3 years. And these are our children, Emma and Jack." The room went silent. The kind of silence that rings in your ears and makes your skin prickle. I looked at the faces around me, friends, colleagues, neighbors, all witnessing my humiliation. Some knew, I could tell from their averted gazes. Others looked as shocked as I felt. But what David didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already discovered his betrayal months ago. And tonight wasn't just my birthday celebration. It was Judgment Day. As our eyes met across the room, I smiled. Not the broken smile of a woman devastated, but the calm, knowing smile of someone who held all the cards. "How nice of you to finally introduce us," I said, reaching for the knife beside my cake. "Now let me introduce you to something of mine. What would you do if your entire life turned out to be a lie? How far would you go to make things right?" 6 months earlier, I had everything. At least, that's what everyone told me. From the outside, my life sparkled like expensive champagne, successful career as a corporate attorney, beautiful colonial home in the suburbs, and a handsome husband who traveled often for his prestigious consulting job. After years of fertility struggles, we'd finally made peace with being childless and embraced our freedom. We traveled extensively, had a wide circle of friends, and never worried about money. "You're so lucky, Eliza," my sister Megan said during our monthly lunch. "David is such a catch. Remember how all my friends were jealous when you two got married?" I nodded absently, pushing my salad around my plate. Lately, something felt off. David's trips had become more frequent, sometimes extending without notice. When home, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone and taking calls in another room. "Earth to Eliza," Megan waved her hand in front of my face. "What's going on with you? You seem a million miles away." "Just work stress," I lied. "We're handling a major merger." But it wasn't work. It was the growing hollow feeling in my chest every time David kissed me goodbye. The way his eyes no longer quite met mine when he said, "I love you." Little things that together formed a picture I wasn't ready to see. I drove home after lunch, taking the scenic route through our affluent neighborhood. The houses stood proud and perfect, hiding whatever secrets lay within their elegant walls. Just like my marriage. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed David's car was home, strange, since he'd told me he had meetings all day. I entered quietly, hearing his voice from his home office. "I miss you too, sweetheart," he was saying. "Yes, I know. I'll figure it out soon. Kiss the kids for me." I froze outside the door, my blood turning to ice water in my veins. "Kids? What kids?" "I love you, Vanessa. More than anything." The words hung in the air like poison. I backed away silently, retreating to my car. With trembling hands, I started the engine and drove, nowhere in particular, just away. Rain began to fall, matching the tears streaming down my face. Have you ever felt that moment when your entire reality shatters? What would you do first, confront the lie or investigate deeper? Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever we drop in amazing stories like this. They say ignorance is bliss. But once that veil lifts, you can't go back. For the next week, I played the perfect wife while becoming a detective in my own marriage. David left for another business trip, giving me free rein to search for answers. I started with his office. The obvious places yielded nothing, he was too careful for that. But in the back of his filing cabinet, behind tax documents from years ago, I found a folder labeled Property Records, Chicago. We didn't own property in Chicago. Inside was a deed for a house purchased 3 years ago in David's name and someone named Vanessa Collins. Along with mortgage statements, utility bills, and school registration forms for Emma and Jack Collins Harrington. My husband had another family. Another life. Another wife. I sat on our bedroom floor surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, feeling strangely calm. The tears had stopped, replaced by something colder and more focused. That night, I called my oldest friend, Rachel. "I need a good private investigator," I said without preamble when she answered. "Eliza? What's wrong?" "Everything," I replied. "And I'm going to need your help." 3 days later, I sat across from Thomas Chen, a retired detective turned PI, in a coffee shop 2 towns over. "Mrs. Harrington, are you sure you want to do this?" he asked after I'd explained the situation. "Sometimes the truth is worse than not knowing." I looked him straight in the eyes. "The truth is already worse than anything I imagined. Now I need proof." Over the next month, Thomas sent me regular updates. Photos of David with his other family in a charming Chicago suburb. Copies of their marriage certificate, dated just 2 years after ours, making him a bigamist. School records for the children. Bank statements showing how he diverted nearly half his income to support them. Most damning was the life insurance policy naming Vanessa as the sole beneficiary, a policy worth $2 million. "He's been carefully constructing this double life for years," Thomas explained during our final meeting. "From what I can tell, neither family knows about the other. He's told his Chicago family that he works in international sales, which explains his time away." "How is this even possible in today's world?" I asked, numb. "People believe what they want to believe," Thomas said gently. "And your husband is exceptionally careful. He maintains separate phones, email accounts, credit cards, everything." I nodded, gathering the thick file of evidence. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." As I walked away, Thomas called after me. "Mrs. Harrington? Whatever you're planning, be careful." I turned back with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, I'm way past being careful." "Would you confront your spouse immediately, or would you take time to plan your next move? What's the perfect revenge for someone who stole years of your life?" Most people rush revenge. They act in the heat of anger, making mistakes, leaving themselves vulnerable. I wasn't going to make that mistake. For 2 more months, I played the role of oblivious wife perfectly. I greeted David with kisses when he returned from business trips. I listened attentively to his lies about conference calls and client meetings. All while secretly dismantling our life together piece by piece. First came the finances. As a lawyer, I knew exactly how to protect myself. I documented everything, copied records, and systematically moved my money into accounts he couldn't access. I consulted with Bernard, my firm's top divorce attorney, showing him the evidence of David's bigamy. "This is extraordinary," Bernard said, examining the documents. "In all my years of practice, I've rarely seen a case this clear-cut. He's committed multiple felonies here." "I don't just want a divorce," I explained. "I want him to lose everything." Bernard removed his glasses, studying me closely. "Eliza, I understand you're hurt. But revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people think it will." "This isn't about satisfaction," I replied. "It's about justice." Next came my support network. I carefully selected who to tell: my sister Megan, Rachel, and my colleague Julia. People I trusted completely who could help with what I was planning. "I can't believe he did this," Megan fumed when I showed her the evidence. "My own brother-in-law. Living a whole separate life for years." "What are you going to do?" Rachel asked. I outlined my plan, watching their expressions shift from shock to grudging admiration. "It's elaborate," Julia said finally. "And definitely risky. Do you think it will work?" I asked. They exchanged glances before Megan spoke. "If anyone can pull this off, it's you." The final piece fell into place when David mentioned my upcoming 40th birthday. We should have a party, he suggested one evening. Something special to mark the occasion. I looked up from my book, heart racing despite my calm exterior. That sounds wonderful. Why don't you plan it? Invite all our friends. Make it a surprise. He seemed pleased by my enthusiasm, not noticing the cold calculation behind my smile. Any special requests? He asked. Just one, I replied. I want it to be memorable. Something no one will ever forget. How far would you go to expose someone who betrayed you? Would you want a private reckoning or a public humiliation? I needed to know my enemy. 3 weeks before my birthday, I took a personal day and drove to Chicago. I'd memorized Vanessa's schedule from Thomas's surveillance. Thursday afternoon she volunteered at the children's school library while a neighbor watched her kids. I found her exactly where I expected, shelving books in the elementary school's cheerful library. She was pretty in an understated way, chestnut hair pulled back in a ponytail, simple clothes, minimal makeup. Younger than me by maybe 8 years. I approached her directly. Excuse me, are you Vanessa? She looked up with a friendly smile. Yes, can I help you find something? Actually, I'm doing some research on dual-career families for a magazine article, I lied smoothly. One of the teachers mentioned you might be willing to talk about balancing family life with your husband's travel schedule. Her face lit up. Oh. Sure, I'd be happy to help, though I'm not sure how interesting my life is. We settled at a small table in the corner, and I turned on my phone's voice recorder with a casual movement. So tell me about your family, I prompted. Well, there's me, my husband David, and our 2 children, Emma and Jack, she began, showing me photos on her phone. David works in international sales, so he's away a lot. It can be hard on the kids, but we make it work. How did you 2 meet? I asked, maintaining my professional smile while my stomach churned. At a conference in Boston 4 years ago, she said, blushing slightly. It was so romantic. He was giving a presentation, and we just connected instantly. He was going through a divorce at the time. I nodded encouragingly, fighting to keep my expression neutral. Divorce. Of course that's what he'd told her. We got married pretty quickly, some people thought too quickly, she continued. But when you know, right? Absolutely, I agreed. And he travels, how often? About 2 weeks every month, she sighed. It's tough, but he's building something important for our future. He's actually talking about cutting back soon so he can be home more. As she spoke, I studied her. There was no guile in her eyes, no hint that she knew she was part of a devastating deception. She was another victim, loving the same lying man I had once loved. I ended the interview after 30 minutes, thanking her for her time. This was nice, she said. Most days I just talk to the kids. Adult conversation is a treat. As I walked away, she called after me, I didn't catch which magazine you're writing for? Deception Monthly, I replied without turning around. That night, I sat in my hotel room listening to the recording, tears finally breaking through my carefully constructed walls. Not for David, I was long past mourning him. But for Vanessa and her children, whose world I was about to shatter. For a moment, I considered abandoning my plan. Walking away, starting fresh, letting them continue in blissful ignorance. Then I remembered the life insurance policy with her name on it. The years of lies. The future that had been stolen from me. No. They deserved to know the truth as much as I had. And David deserved everything that was coming to him. Would you warn the other woman before exposing everything? Or is her pain simply collateral damage in your pursuit of justice? My birthday fell on a Saturday that year. Perfect for what I had planned. David had embraced his role as party planner with surprising enthusiasm, confirming my suspicions that he saw this as an opportunity. Our large backyard would host about 50 guests, colleagues from my firm, neighbors, old college friends, and family members. I've invited a few business associates too, he mentioned casually over dinner 1 week before the event. People I think you'd enjoy meeting. I smiled. how thoughtful. Anyone I know? No, they're from my Chicago office. You'll like them, though. Chicago office. Of course. I nodded appreciatively, hiding my racing heart behind my wineglass. He was finally going to merge his worlds, but not in the way he planned. The day before the party, I met with my 3 confidants for the final review of our plan. Everything set on my end, Julia confirmed, showing me the formal-looking documents in her briefcase. Though not technically legal papers, they looked official enough for our purposes. Rachel handed me a small flash drive. The presentation is ready. I tested it on the outdoor projection system this morning while David was at the gym. And I've confirmed with the special guests, Megan added. They'll arrive exactly when planned. I took a deep breath, looking at these women who had become my salvation over the past months. Thank you all. I couldn't do this without you. Are you nervous? Rachel asked gently. No, I realized with surprise. I'm ready for this to be over. That night, David and I slept in the same bed for the last time. He wrapped his arms around me, murmuring something about making my birthday special. I lay awake, listening to his steady breathing, remembering when that sound had been my comfort rather than a reminder of betrayal. 15 years of marriage. Years I couldn't get back. Morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, mild temperature, gentle breeze. As if even nature approved of what was to come. Happy birthday, beautiful, David said, bringing me breakfast in bed. Today is going to be amazing. It certainly will be, I agreed, accepting his kiss with a practiced smile. It certainly will be. What's the worst betrayal you can imagine? And what would be justice for such a crime? By 6 o'clock, our backyard was transformed. Strings of lights hung from trees, illuminating elegant tables draped in white linen. A small stage held a projection screen for what guests assumed would be a touching tribute to my 40 years. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres while soft music played. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a crimson dress that hugged my figure, projecting confidence and strength rather than playing for sympathy. My hair was swept up, diamond earrings, a gift from David on our 10th anniversary, catching the light as I moved. Guests arrived steadily, offering birthday wishes and compliments on the beautiful setting. David played the role of devoted husband perfectly, his hand resting possessively on my lower back as we greeted everyone. You've outdone yourself, I told him, genuinely impressed by the party's elegance. He beamed with pride. Only the best for my wife. At 7:30, I noticed David checking his watch repeatedly, his eyes darting to the entrance. I knew exactly who he was waiting for. Expecting someone? I asked innocently. Just a few colleagues running late, he replied, kissing my cheek. Right on cue, Rachel appeared at my side. Eliza, there's a small issue with the catering that needs your attention. I excused myself, squeezing David's arm. Back in a minute, darling. Behind the catering tent, Megan waited with Julia. They're here, Megan whispered. Pulled up about 2 minutes ago. Is everyone in position? I asked. Julia nodded. Bernard has the legal team standing by. Thomas is monitoring all exits. The police have been notified to expect a possible disturbance but won't intervene unless necessary. Let's do this, I said, straightening my shoulders. We returned to the party separately, blending back into the crowd. I positioned myself where I could watch David greet his colleagues without being immediately visible to them. And there they were, Vanessa, looking nervous but pretty in a blue dress, holding hands with 2 well-dressed children. My heart squeezed painfully at the sight of them. The girl, Emma, had David's eyes. The boy, Jack, his smile. David embraced them warmly, too focused on his own performance to notice the silent shift happening around them as my allies moved people into position. I approached slowly, a champagne glass in my hand, Rachel and Julia flanking me at a distance. David, I called, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quieter crowd. Aren't you going to introduce me to your guests? He turned, his face composed but eyes wary. Eliza, these are my colleagues from Chicago. Vanessa Collins and her children. Colleagues? I repeated, extending my hand to Vanessa. How interesting. I'm Eliza Harrington. David's wife of 15 years. Confusion flickered across her face. Wife. But David's been divorced for years. Her voice trailed off as she looked between us. That's what he told you, isn't it? I said gently. Just like he told me he was childless and working in consulting. The blood drained from David's face as he realized what was happening. Eliza, this isn't the time or place? I finished for him. I disagree. I think my birthday party is the perfect time for truth, don't you? By now, all conversation had stopped. Every guest was watching the drama unfold. What's going on, David? Vanessa demanded, pulling her children closer to her sides. David looked around desperately, seeing no escape. I can explain everything. Please do, I invited, gesturing toward the suddenly silent crowd. We're all very interested in your explanation. How do you think someone would react when their double life collapses around them? With anger, with excuses, or with desperate attempts to regain control? This is a misunderstanding, David said, his charming smile now strained and desperate. Eliza and I have been separated for years. The divorce just isn't finalized yet for tax reasons. I laughed, the sound brittle in the tense air. Is that your story? Interesting. Because I have our joint tax returns from last year right here. I nodded to Julia, who handed me a folder. And these, I continued, are property records showing that David purchased a house in Chicago 3 years ago with Vanessa Collins. I laid the documents on a nearby table. A house he bought while still very much married to me and living in this house. Vanessa stepped forward, her face pale. David told me his divorce was finalized 4 years ago. There never was a divorce filing, I informed her. Not even a separation. David and I have shared this house, this bed, this life continuously for 15 years. Murmurs swept through the crowd. David's face hardened as he realized his easy escape was impossible. Vanessa, take the kids and wait in the car, he ordered. This is some kind of sick joke. The only joke here is how long you thought you could maintain this charade, I said. Then, turning to Vanessa, I only learned about you 6 months ago. About your marriage, your children. Everything has been a lie. Vanessa stared at David, tears welling in her eyes. Is this true? Are you still married to her? Technically, yes, but... Technically, she repeated incredulously. We have a marriage certificate. We have children. Which makes him a bigamist, I pointed out. A criminal offense in both Illinois and here. The children were growing upset, the girl clutching her mother's dress while the boy looked up at David with confusion. Dad? What's happening? That single word, Dad, sent a ripple of shock through the gathering. Several of our longtime friends shook their heads in disbelief. I think it's time for the presentation, I announced, nodding to Rachel by the projection equipment. The screen lit up with a carefully edited montage, photographs of David and me throughout our 15-year marriage alongside time-stamped photos of David with his second family. Financial records showing money transfers. The bigamous marriage certificate. The life insurance policy. For 3 years, I narrated as the images changed, David has maintained 2 complete lives. 2 wives. 2 homes. And he's funded this deception with money partly earned through my family connections and partly through investment fraud. At this, David's head snapped up. That's a lie. Is it? Bernard, would you care to explain what we found? Bernard stepped forward, professional and authoritative in his expensive suit. Upon investigating Mr. Harrington's finances, we discovered he's been running an investment scheme using clients from both his legitimate business and fictitious ones. He's been promising returns from companies that don't exist. This was our master stroke. During our investigation of David's financial affairs, we'd uncovered evidence of actual financial crimes. What had started as a search for proof of his double life had revealed something far more damaging. Several of those defrauded investors are here tonight, Bernard continued, gesturing to 3 stunned-looking men near the back, clients David had personally invited, not knowing I'd already contacted them with evidence of his fraud. David lunged toward me, his face contorted with rage. "You bitch. You've been planning this all along." 2 security guards Thomas had hired materialized instantly, restraining him before he could reach me. "Yes, David," I said calmly, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. "I have been planning this. Just like you planned to juggle 2 families indefinitely while stealing from investors. Have you ever watched someone's carefully constructed lies collapse all at once? What do you think happens to a person in that moment?" The next hour unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance of destruction. While David was restrained, Julia distributed packets of evidence to key people, the fraud victims, Vanessa's brother who had arrived to support her, and the 2 police officers who now stood discreetly near the exit. Vanessa collapsed into a patio chair, her children huddled against her as she processed the unthinkable truth of her life. I approached her cautiously, aware of the pain I was causing despite her being as much a victim as I was. "I'm sorry you found out this way," I said quietly. "But you deserve to know the truth." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Did you know about us when I married him?" "No," I assured her. "I only discovered everything 6 months ago. He told me he was childless and traveled for work." Her son, Jack, stared at me with solemn eyes. "Are you really married to my dad too?" The simple question broke something in me. I knelt down to his level. "Yes, I am. But that doesn't make any of this your fault. Your dad made bad choices, not you." Meanwhile, David had shifted from rage to desperate negotiation, trying to convince the security guards and then the police officers that this was all an elaborate misunderstanding. "You can't arrest me," he insisted as handcuffs were placed on his wrists. "This is a domestic matter." "Bigamy and investment fraud aren't domestic matters," replied one officer calmly. "They're felonies." Most guests had the decency to leave quietly, though a few lingered at the perimeter, unable to tear themselves away from the spectacular implosion of what had appeared to be a perfect life. My sister Megan approached with a glass of water for Vanessa. "There's a room prepared inside where you and the children can have some privacy," she offered. "My sister thought you might need space to process everything." Vanessa looked at me in surprise. "You prepared a room? For us?" "I knew this would be traumatic," I explained. "Especially for the children. I didn't want them to witness everything." As Megan led them inside, Bernard pulled me aside. "The police will want statements from both you and Mrs. Collins, the other Mrs. Harrington, legally speaking. They're taking David in now on the fraud charges, but the bigamy case will take statements to proceed." I nodded, watching as David was escorted to a waiting police car, his face ashen. Our eyes met as he was guided into the back seat. I expected to see hatred there, or perhaps a plea for mercy. Instead, I saw something else, a flicker of respect, perhaps even admiration for how thoroughly I'd orchestrated his downfall. He gave me a small, rueful nod before ducking into the car. The party, my 40th birthday celebration, was effectively over. Caterers quietly packed up food and equipment. The lights that had seemed so festive now cast eerie shadows across the empty tables. Rachel found me sitting alone at what had been the head table, a full glass of champagne untouched before me. "You did it," she said simply, taking the seat beside me. "I did," I agreed, still watching the space where the police car had been. "So why don't I feel better?" She covered my hand with hers. "Because revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just stops the bleeding." We sat in silence for a long moment before I finally raised my glass. To 40. And to starting over. Is revenge ever truly satisfying? Or does it simply create a different kind of emptiness? The days following my birthday became a blur of police statements, legal meetings, and press inquiries as David's double life became local news. His fraud scheme turned out to be more extensive than even I had suspected, with losses totaling nearly $3 million from over 24 victims. I avoided the media frenzy, retreating to a small rental property I'd secured months earlier in preparation. Megan stayed with me those first difficult nights when sleep proved elusive and doubt crept in during the dark hours. Did I do the right thing? I asked her one night as we shared a bottle of wine. Those children will grow up with their father in prison. Those children would have grown up with a liar and a thief as their father either way, Megan pointed out. At least now Vanessa can build an honest life for them. Speaking of Vanessa, she surprised me by reaching out a week after the party. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes, both of us nervous and uncertain. I needed to see you, she explained as we settled with our coffee. To understand everything. What do you want to know? I asked. When did you suspect? What gave him away? I told her about the phone call I'd overheard, the investigation that followed, how I'd discovered her and the children. I interviewed you, I admitted. At the school library. Her eyes widened. The magazine article. I knew you looked familiar. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a short, pained sound. God, we've been such fools. Not fools, I corrected. Victims. There's a difference. We talked for hours, comparing notes on the man we'd both loved. The same birthday gifts he'd given us both. The same romantic lines. Even some of the same friends, people who must have known about both families but said nothing. I keep asking myself how I didn't see it, Vanessa confessed. There were signs. Calls he wouldn't take around me. Weekends when he was unreachable. I just trusted him. So did I said softly. For 15 years. Before we parted, she took my hand. Thank you. Not for how you did it, but for making sure I knew the truth. Meanwhile, David's legal troubles mounted. Denied bail due to flight risk, he awaited trial from a county jail cell. His lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit, contacted me repeatedly about a potential deal. He'll plead guilty to the fraud charges if you don't pursue the bigamy case, Bernard relayed after one such conversation. He thinks it will reduce his sentence. What do you recommend? I asked. Bernard considered. The fraud charges are more serious in terms of sentencing. Adding bigamy won't significantly increase his prison time. Then why does he care so much? Image, Bernard explained. Fraud makes him a white-collar criminal. Bigamy makes him a tabloid headline. I thought about it overnight before making my decision. The next morning, I called Bernard. Tell his lawyer I'll agree on one condition, I said. David signs over his parental rights to the children. Vanessa gets full custody with no possibility of him contesting it later. Bernard sounded surprised. Are you sure? That's letting him off easy. It's not about him, I replied. It's about those kids. They deserve a clean break and a chance at a normal life. 2 days later, Vanessa called me, her voice choked with emotion. He signed the papers. He gave up the kids without a fight. Something inside me hardened at this final evidence of David's character. Even his own children were merely chess pieces to him. What will you tell them as they grow up? I asked her. There was a long pause before she answered. The age-appropriate truth. That their father made bad choices that hurt people, including them. That he's paying for those choices. And that none of it was their fault. That night, I finally slept without dreaming of David for the first time in months. How do you rebuild your life after discovering it was built on lies? Where do you find trust again? My 41st birthday arrived without fanfare, exactly as I wanted it. No party, no spectacle, just dinner with my closest friends at my new condo downtown. The past year had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. After finalizing my divorce, surprisingly simple given the circumstances. I'd left the corporate law firm for a position with a nonprofit specializing in helping women rebuild their lives after trauma. The smaller salary meant downsizing from our suburban showplace to a modern condo with views of the city lights, a trade-off that felt like freedom rather than loss. To new beginnings, Rachel toasted, raising her glass as we finished dinner. And to true friends, I added, looking around at the small group who had stood by me through everything. After everyone left, I sat alone on my balcony watching the city below. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Happy birthday, Eliza. I underestimated you. My mistake. D." Somehow, he'd found a way to contact me from prison. I wasn't surprised, David had always been resourceful. I deleted the message without responding and blocked the number. He no longer had power over my thoughts or feelings. His sentencing hearing had come and gone, resulting in 12 years for the fraud convictions. I hadn't attended, having said my goodbyes to that chapter of my life. The next morning, I met Vanessa for our now regular monthly coffee. She and the children had moved back to her hometown in Michigan, where she was teaching elementary school and slowly rebuilding. Emma asked about him yesterday, she shared, stirring her latte. She wanted to know if bad people can become good again. What did you tell her? I asked. That everyone makes choices every day. And that I believe people can change if they truly want to. She smiled sadly. I don't know if David will ever change, but I want her to believe in redemption. I nodded, understanding her wisdom. How are you doing? Really? Some days are harder than others, she admitted. But we're okay. The kids are resilient. And I'm dating again, actually. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely happy for her. What about you? Anyone special? I shook my head. Not yet. I'm focusing on myself right now. Learning who I am without David defining me. We parted with a hug, something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Two women connected by betrayal but refusing to be defined by it. That evening, I received a large envelope in the mail. Inside was a legal document. David had signed over his share of our investment portfolio, worth nearly $1 million. A note was attached. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did. You deserved better. David. I stood in my kitchen, staring at his familiar handwriting. Was this genuine remorse or another manipulation? Did it even matter anymore? After careful consideration, I transferred the entire amount to a trust for Emma and Jack's education. David had stolen their father, the least I could do was help secure their future. As I watched the sunset from my balcony that night, I realized something important. The woman who had orchestrated that elaborate birthday revenge was not the same woman I was becoming. That Eliza had been fueled by pain and betrayal, justified as her actions might have been. This Eliza, the one sipping wine and watching stars appear above the city, was finding her way towards something else. Not forgiveness, exactly. But perhaps understanding. And definitely strength. I'd lost a husband but found myself in the process. And that, I realized, was the most profound revenge of all. As the years passed, the story of my birthday became something of a legend. Not the dramatic details of betrayal and exposure, but the way I had transformed my pain into purpose. My work with the nonprofit expanded. I began developing programs specifically designed to help women rebuilding their lives after massive personal betrayals, financial, emotional, marital. Each case was different, but the core remained the same: reclaiming your narrative. Vanessa and I remained connected, though not constantly. We'd text on birthdays, share occasional updates about our lives. Her children were thriving, Emma was becoming a talented musician, Jack showed promise in mathematics. They knew the basic truth about their father without being consumed by his mistakes. David served 8 years of his 12-year sentence before being released on parole. I heard through mutual connections that he was working as a low-level accountant, his previous professional networks permanently closed to him. The mighty had truly fallen. But this wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. About Vanessa. About moving forward. 5 years after that fateful birthday, I met Michael, a widower who understood complexity, who had his own story of loss and renewal. Our relationship was built on transparency, mutual respect, and a shared understanding that life rarely follows the script we imagine. During our first serious conversation, I told him everything. About David. About the revenge. About my journey. That must have been incredibly difficult, Michael said simply, holding my hand. It was, I agreed. But I'm not that woman anymore. I'm someone who survived. Someone who grew. At our wedding 2 years later, Vanessa was there, a bridesmaid, a friend who understood the intricate tapestry of survival. Emma, now 16, played a violin piece she'd composed herself during the ceremony. Life, I'd learned, was not about perfect revenge. It was about perfect resilience. What would you do with a second chance? How would you rewrite your story?